There was a time where Ark wasn't just another game to me. It was the game. For almost 9 years I played Ark. Official, unofficial, PvE, PvP. Thousands of hours, countless wipes, late night raids, boss fights, base builds, friendships, betrayals, victories. This silly little dinosaur game became a huge part of my life. Long before I became Horror Queen Harley, I was an Ark creator. My alerts were Ark themed. Every spare hour, farming, breeding, building, taming, and planning what came next. I genuinely loved this game. It wasn't just another survival game. It was home. It helped shape my journey as a creator, which is exactly why I hate making this video. Because over the last 9 years, I've watched the game I love slowly become something I barely recognize. And after recently returning to Official, I think it's finally time I talk about why. Official PvP was never easy. You got wiped, you got offline raided, people trash talked, there were politics, alliances, backstabbing. That was always part of Ark. But underneath all of that, there was still an incredible survival game. Even if you lost everything, you could rebuild, you could outplay people, you could make memories that kept you coming back, but eventually, the people became harder to deal with than the game itself. The last time I seriously played Official, I experienced some of the worst treatment I'd ever received in an online game. Not because I got raided, not because I lost, but because of people. The constant toxicity eventually outweighed everything I loved about Ark, so I walked away. I honestly believed that chapter of my life was over. Then recently, someone very dear to me convinced me to give it another chance. And truthfully, they didn't have to convince me very hard. Because if you've ever loved Ark, you know it has a strange way of pulling you back in. You start remembering the good times, building your first base, finding your first wrecks, preparing for boss fights, the excitement of surviving another night. For the first few days, that's exactly how it felt. It was fun, I was excited. I realized I'd actually missed the game. I wanted so badly to believe the Ark I remembered was still there. That nostalgia blinded me, but nostalgia only lasts so long. Eventually, reality caught up. One of the biggest problems I found on Official wasn't balance. It wasn't a creature, it wasn't a map. It was the complete erosion of competitive integrity. Over the time I spent back on Official, I genuinely struggled to find a tribe that wasn't connected to cheating in some way. Sometimes it was someone inside the tribe, sometimes it was someone outside the tribe feeding them information. Sometimes it was obvious, sometimes it wasn't. But it was always there. When legitimate players begin assuming everyone is cheating, there's already a sign something has gone terribly wrong. Because eventually you stop asking, did we get outplayed? And start asking, how did they know? That's not a healthy competitive environment. The tribes trying to play fairly aren't competing against better players. They're competing against people willing to ignore the rules. When cheating becomes normal, skill stops mattering. Knowledge stops mattering. Experience stops mattering. The game slowly becomes less about who plays better and more about who's willing to do whatever it takes to win. For legitimate players, Official starts feeling impossible. The obvious answer is, just report them. And people do, constantly. The problem is, reporting only works if there's a meaningful consequence. From what I experienced and from the countless conversations I had while playing, many players simply don't believe that's happening consistently enough. And when action is taken, what actually changes? The smart cheater simply just makes another account. Meanwhile, the legitimate player has invested hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours into their character, their tribe, their tames, and everything they've built. They're the ones with something to lose. The people breaking the rules often aren't. That creates a frustrating cycle where honest players feel like they're carrying all of the risk, while the people cheating simply move on to the next account. Something else that genuinely shocked me, I lost count of how many times I heard people openly boast about having pocket GMs, or claim they could get someone banned through false reports or mass reporting. Whether every one of those claims was honestly true isn't even the point. The point is people felt comfortable saying it. They believed influence mattered, they believed intimidation worked, and they used that belief to scare other players into staying quiet. No competitive game should leave its community wondering whether speaking up is worth the risk. It didn't take long before I remembered why I had left. Every single day there was some new drama, arguments, manipulation, gaslighting, being ignored, being spoken over, being made to feel like my opinions didn't matter, sometimes by complete strangers, sometimes by the very people in my own tribe. Every day became emotionally draining. Instead of wondering what adventure I'd have that day, I found myself wondering what drama I was about to walk into. The game wasn't what made me dread logging in. The people were. Somewhere along the way, the game stopped being about surviving Ark and started becoming about surviving the community surrounding it. Then there's another issue that became impossible to ignore. Entire maps are effectively controlled by groups monetizing progression. Want a boss fight? Pay for it. Need resources? Pay up. Instead of earning your way through the game, you're expected to open your wallet. That's not survival, that's monopoly. Watching progression become something sold by players instead of earned through gameplay is one of the saddest changes I've witnessed over the years. Then there's something I don't think that gets talked about enough: being a woman on Official. I've spent years gaming. Competitive shooters, MMOs, survival games, horror games. I've dealt with toxic communities before. Nothing has compared to what I have experienced on Official. The moment people realize you're a woman, everything changes. It doesn't matter that you spent nearly a decade playing. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. It doesn't matter how much you know. You're immediately underestimated, talked over, ignored, or placed into a box. Oh, you can raise the dinos. You can breed. You can organize the vaults. As if that's your only purpose. Those jobs are important, but that's not the issue. The issue is the assumption. You're no longer seen as another player, you're the girl. Then come the comments, the insults, the sexism, the slurs. I couldn't go a single day without hearing someone called some kind of slur. Not one day. Eventually, it wears you down. I want to make one thing very, very clear. This is not because I got raided. I've been wiped more times than I can count. I've lost years of progression. I've rebuilt from absolutely nothing. That's Ark. That's part of what makes it exciting. This isn't about losing. It's about the environment that's developed around the game. Because eventually you realize you're spending more time surviving the community than surviving the dinosaurs. And that's what's heartbreaking. If there's one thing I don't want this video to do, it's paint every Ark player with the same brush. Because despite everything I've said, this game also gave me some of the best people I've ever known. Some of my closest friends today I know because of Ark. People who've celebrated my successes, picked me up when life got hard, made me laugh until 3 in the morning while farming metal, shared victories, shared defeats, shared memories I'll never forget. Those friendships are real and I wouldn't trade them for anything. But that's what makes this painful, because for every incredible person I've met, there seem to be 3 others who remind me about how cruel people can be. I've seen lies spread simply to destroy someone's reputation. I've watched people manipulate entire tribes for their own benefit. I've watched people scam others out of money. I've watched harassment become entertainment. I've watched people bullied until they quit. And perhaps the saddest thing I've experienced is watching people I genuinely cared about, people I once called friends, slowly become the very people they used to complain about. Whether it was power, the politics, the pressure to survive, or simply spending too long surrounded by constant toxicity, something changed. They became colder, crueler, and more willing to hurt people if it meant getting ahead. It was like watching the game slowly strip away the parts of them that made them good. Not everyone, far from it, but enough that it left a lasting impression on me. I don't think the biggest threat to Ark is balance, or overpowered dinos. I think it's what this environment slowly convinces people is acceptable. When toxicity becomes the culture, good people either leave or they adapt. And I think that's sad. I don't expect Official to become friendly all of a sudden. It's a PvP survival game. Conflict belongs there. Competition belongs there. Rivalries belong there. But cheating doesn't. Harassment doesn't. Weaponizing reports doesn't. Constant abuse doesn't. Women shouldn't have to fight for basic respect before they can even be given the chance to play. The problem isn't Ark itself. The problem is the culture that's been allowed to grow around it. And the irony is, after everything I've said in this video, I still believe Ark is one of the greatest survival games ever made. No other game has ever made me feel the same as waking up on a beach with nothing, working my way up from a stone pickaxe, building a home, taming creatures I thought I'd never ride, and sharing those adventures with other people. When Ark is good, there's nothing else like it, and that's why this hurts. I don't think dinosaurs ruined Ark. I don't think maps ruined Ark. I don't think survival mechanics ruined Ark. I don't even think the bugs are what finally pushed me away. People did. Or more accurately, I think a culture was allowed to grow where cheating became expected, where toxicity became entertainment, where harassment became normal, and where good people either walked away or slowly became the very thing they once hated. I've seen both sides of this community. I've met people through Ark that'll be in my life forever, but I've also met some of the most vindictive, manipulative, and genuinely cruel people I've encountered in almost 3 decades of gaming. I've watched friendships fall apart. I've watched communities destroy themselves from the inside. I've watched people change, not overnight, slowly, until one day I barely recognize the person standing in front of me. I don't mourn the game, I mourn what happened to the people inside it. I hope one day Official becomes a place where legitimate players can compete without constantly wondering who's cheating, where women can log in without having to prove they deserve to be there, where people don't have to question whether the rules apply equally to everyone, where winning comes from skill instead of exploits, connections, or intimidation. Because underneath all of this, there is an incredible game that always has been. If you've played Official, I genuinely would like to hear your experience. Maybe yours was different. Maybe you had an amazing time. Or maybe you experienced some of the same things. Whatever your story is, drop it below. For now, I will see you in the next one.